So that's going to be tough to live up to. That was a pretty awesome introduction, and I want to thank Jen for that introduction and for this opportunity. This is awesome. This is a great opportunity for me. Of course, I get to follow an official TED video, so that's a challenge in itself. But I got a call about 3 weeks ago, and I was asked the question, would you be interested in doing a TEDx talk? And of course I said, yeah, what a phenomenal opportunity. All of us in education pretty much know about TED and TEDx, and we know about these phenomenal presentations, these speeches, these impassioned speeches that we get to hear, and to have the opportunity to do that, that was the easy part. And then I started to think back to some of the most powerful speeches or presentations I may have heard in my life, whether it was in the athletic realm or in the educational field. And I thought about a lot, but there was one in particular that kind of popped into my head. I don't know how many of you out there remember Jim Valvano. Those of you who love sports, you probably remember Jimmy V. He was a famed coach of North Carolina State basketball team, won the national championship. But toward the end of his life, he got cancer. And he was called to the ESPY Awards. He was being awarded the Arthur Ashe Award. And that's him there at the ESPYs giving that last powerful speech, because he was an amazing orator. And that statement there that he said over and over again, don't give up, don't ever give up. He fought right through to the end. He created the Jimmy V Foundation, which has raised millions and millions of dollars towards cancer, to fight against cancer. But I use that statement all the time with my students at Shea High School. Every time we need to prepare for something important, I tell them, don't give up, don't ever give up. I'll say the same thing to my own children. There was something Jimmy talked about on that day, and it was something that I kind of try to emulate in my life, something I try to live, and it was these 3 things, and he said, these 3 things make a full day. These 3 things make a great day, and they are: spend some time in thought, think, each day, laugh. Laughter is the best medicine, isn't it? So each day you want to try to laugh. And, I got to aim it that way, have your emotion move you to tears. That last one right there, that's my baby boy. That's my 18-month-old. That was actually just captured recently by a friend of mine at a soccer game for my other daughter. Those of you that have children, you know that you can be moved to tears by them. Sometimes it's out of frustration, but often it's out of pride. Okay? And that one right there captures that for me. So the next thing I then had to do was, what am I going to talk about? I have 18 years of education, 18 years in the field of education as a teacher and as an administrator. What is it that I want to try to capture in this 18 minutes that I have with you today? And so some of you out there in the audience, and thank you, Jen, for that amazing introduction, but some of you in the audience might say, I know Don's going to be talking about ed tech. He's going to be talking about technology. He's going to be talking about blended learning. He's big with Twitter, and he's got this EdChat RI thing that he does. So yeah, that's probably what Don's going to be talking to us about today. And although that is a part of who I am, that's not what I'm here to talk to you about today. Some of you out there who may know me a little bit, you may say, he's big on growth mindset. And that's true. I do believe that with persistence and perseverance, that we can achieve whatever we set our minds to. And technology helps us. As I talk to my kids at Shea, I'll say, use YouTube. You can figure out how to do just about anything. I figured out how to change a toilet at home by using YouTube. You can do it. Growth mindset. But that's not what I'm here to talk to you about today. And some of you might say goal setting. I've set a goal for myself here today. I'd like to do what Jimmy V talked about was a full day. In the 18 minutes I have with you, I'd like to hopefully have you spend some time in thought, hopefully get to laugh, and hopefully have your emotion move you to tears. But goal setting is not what I'm here to talk to you about today. Those of you who really know me out in the audience, and there are some, I have some good friends here with me, my wife is here with me to come out to support me, you know what I'm about to talk to you about. And it's about relationships. Relationships are the key to everything that we do in life and certainly in education. I'd like you all to do me a favor. As an educator, I like to be interactive with the audience, so I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to participate a little bit here. I'd like you to close your eyes for me, and I'd like you to think back. I'd like you to think back to the years when you were a student. For some of you, it's easy. For some of us, though, we have to think back a little bit. Think back about those teachers that you had, that teacher or teachers, if you were fortunate, that you had that made a significant impact on your life. Who were they? I imagine right now you're probably envisioning them. But I'd like you to think about what were those attributes, those characteristics that they had. And many times, you can open your eyes now, many times when we do this, I poll the audience and I ask them what they had to say about that. But for the sake of time, let me tell you this. This is what I hear most often. They got to know me. They cared about me deeply. They knew me in and out of school. They came to my events and activities. Those are often the things that I hear when I ask that question to students or teachers, anyone who participates in this. And so I feel we have an obligation as educators today to kind of emulate those teachers that had the biggest impact on our lives, because it's our job today as educators to create an impact on the lives of the students that we work with each and every day. And so that's what I'm going to be talking to you about today. About 7 years ago, I experienced something. I experienced a workshop that really rocked me to the core. It was an event called Challenge Day. Some of you may have heard of it. Some of you may have seen it on MTV. They had something on MTV a few years ago. It was a very powerful experience. It was a day-long workshop that I participated in. It was administrators, it was students, it was teachers. There was over 100 of us in there that day. The whole day long we spent together, and we found out we had a lot more in common than we do different. It connected us, and it made a significant impact on my work and my life and the way I approach education. There was one activity that we did in this, and it was one simple sentence, and it was, if you really knew me, what would you know about me? And then the rest of the sentence was filled in by all the different individuals in the room, and it was life-altering. And so what I want to do with you right now, and this is something that I do with my students and I do it with my teachers, is I want to share with you a little bit about who I am. Because somewhere along the way, I decided that it was important for me to humanize myself to my students. It was important for me to let my students know a little bit about me, because I knew in doing so, it would make them feel safer and more comfortable with me. It would create an environment where they know they had somebody that they could come to. And for some of my students, it gave them the belief and the understanding that this person can understand me, because they've been through some of what I've been through in my life. And it changed the work that I did, and this is what I try to push with my teachers and my students all the time. And so I want to share with you right now, if you really knew me, what would you know about me? If you really knew me, you'd have to go back to Thursday night, November 14th, 1991. I was a freshman in college. I was 18 years old. I was sitting in my dorm room with my friends playing cards. We were playing pitch. I think they call it high-low jack out here. We were having a great time, having a lot of fun. We were talking about plans for the weekend. We were going to Montreal. We were going to cross the border. We were going to have a lot of fun. And the phone rang. And my roommate answered it. And he said, Don, it's for you. It's your brother. I said, I have a younger brother. He's 8 years younger than me. He was 10 at the time. I was 18. So I said to everybody, guys, I'm out this hand. You know, play on. I'll be right back. So I went and I got on the phone with my brother, and I talked to my brother. And then I talked to my mother. And every time I'd talk to my family, once I went off to college, I'd always ask to talk to my father. Because growing up, my father, he was strict. You know, he held me accountable. He taught me responsibility and accountability, but he really kept his thumb on me. But not when I went off to college. I was grown up, I was a young man, I was off on my own, and our relationship changed. And it was amazing. But that night, I was too focused on the card game. I was too focused on talking about Montreal. I didn't ask to talk to my father. I got right back into the game. We played the game late into the night, and then And I'm going to tell you this, and this is true, and you students, I apologize, but this is real. This is the real me. As a freshman in college, I had an 8 o'clock class. I usually woke up at about 7:50 and put a hat on and shuffled off to class and kind of paid attention, kind of didn't, maybe didn't take notes. I'm not recommending that, but that was the real me. But not this day. This Friday morning, I woke up, probably around 7 o'clock. I went, I showered, I changed. I went to class. I paid attention. I take notes. I took notes. I had a plan to go to the library to get all my homework done because I wanted to have fun that weekend. I didn't want to worry about homework. I wanted to get it out of the way. But all that changed when I walked into my dorm. My roommate was walking out of the dorm, and he said to me, he said, "Hey, Don, your mom just called. She said she needed to talk to you. She wants you to wait by the phone." I was like, "My mom just called? I just talked to her last night. What?" He said, "I don't know." She said, so of course I didn't really listen. I went and I called. I wasn't going to wait by the phone. I called. And my grandmother answered the phone. You see, my grandmother lived about an hour and a half away, and what I didn't know is she was there that weekend because she and my father were heading to North Carolina for my uncle's wedding. And I said, "Grandma, what are you doing there?" And she said, "Donnie," she said, "Daddy had a heart attack." I said, "What?" She said, "Daddy had a heart attack, and Mom's at the hospital right now, and she should, wait a second, I think she's coming in the door right now." And then my mom got on the phone, and she said something to me that I'll never forget. She said, "Honey, he didn't make it." And I lost it. I was crying, swearing, I guess, you know. The resident director who lived down the hall, he heard this, and so he came in. And he said, "Don, are you okay?" And I said, "No, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. My dad just died." And I know he had the best intentions, and I know he was just trying to console me, but it didn't matter at that time. It was too painful. It hurt too much. And my mom said to me, she said, "Honey, I'll be coming in a half hour." And so I knew that, and I decided I needed to go outside. I needed some fresh air. I needed to be alone. I needed to think. And I walked outside the dorm, and I stood out in front by this tree, and I remember it like it was yesterday. It was lightly misting outside. The quad was empty. Everybody was off at class at this time. And I just stood there under that tree, and I thought, and I reflected back. And I thought about the last time I saw my father. It was just a few days earlier. I picked him up at the airport. See, my mom and my little brother and my dad, they went to Arizona, and they had just come back. And my dad was standing there next to the baggage return. And I ran up behind him. I jumped on his back. I gave him a big bear hug. Didn't faze him. I could never sneak up on him and scare him. It was, I don't know, he had this ability. It was amazing. And I thought about all the times he would say to me, "So you need to remember this for when I'm not around." I'd be like, "When I'm not around, whatever." I was 18. You don't think that, right? So the kids start coming back from class now. The quad starts filling up, and I don't want to be standing out there crying and have everybody coming back and be looking at me and stuff. So I walked back into the dorm, and there was this room, this activity room that we had, pool table and ping pong table over, and I went in there, and I was just kind of sitting on the couch and just still reflecting and thinking. And then my friends started to come in. They knew. And they too were trying to console me, but once again, it really didn't matter. It was just the pain that I was feeling at that time. And then I looked outside, and my mom pulled up with my neighbor, and I walked out. My mom met me halfway, and she came up to me, and she hugged me, and she said, "Honey, he was so proud of you." And I walked to the car, and I got in the car with her. And I handed her this mixed tape. I had this mixed tape that my friend had made me that past summer. I was a lifeguard, and he made me this Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, this Neil Young mixed tape. And there was this one song in particular that immediately came to mind for me. It was "Teach Your Children Well." And I handed my mom that mixed tape, and she put it in the deck. And as we rode along and listened to it, my mom looked at me, and she said, "Honey, who is this?" And I said, "It's Neil Young." She goes, "Oh, yeah." She goes, "What's he saying?" I said, "Teach your children well." And she said, "I want a copy." So I made her a copy of that. So we're riding along, and we're driving now by the hospital. My dad was a chief administrator at a hospital there in Syracuse, New York. And I said, "Mom, I want to go see him." And she said, "Honey, let's go home with Mrs. Tenor-Roberts first, and if you still want to go, we'll come back." And we got home, we got out of the car, and I said, "I want to go see him." And she said, "Okay." So she took us back. My mom and I went back to the hospital. And we go into the emergency room, and the craziest thing happened. You see, 2 weeks earlier, I was a patient at that hospital for the only time I'd ever been a patient at that hospital. I was playing basketball in college, banged heads, had a split over my eye, had to get stitches. I was in this one waiting room, in this one emergency room, on this one bed, same emergency room my father laid in. And we walked in, and my mom stepped back, and she let me go up, and he already had the sheet up, and it's already white, and I leaned down to him, and I said a few words, and I hugged him, and I kissed him, and I turned around, and I looked at my mom, and I said, Mom, does Kevin know? Kevin was my little brother. He was 10. Because my brother Mark and Michelle knew they were off at college. They were coming home. She said, no, honey, I thought we'd just let him come home from school and tell him when he gets home. I said, I don't think so. I don't think that's right. I think he should know. We know. He should know. He'd be upset. She said, I think you're right, honey. So she called the school, and we drove over to his elementary school. And my mom said, honey, why don't you go get him? And I went inside, and the principal knew why I was there, and they called him down. And I stood at the end of this long hallway, much longer than this auditorium, and I watched as my little brother came walking toward me. And he knew I wasn't supposed to be there. And he looked at me, and he said to me, he said, Donnie, what's wrong with me? And I said, you got to understand, too, he was 10. He was in a hypochondriac stage at this time. Everything he had, he thought it was the worst thing, so much so that my brother, who was in med school, he had made a human body for him and labeled all the organs so he would know just exactly what kind of pain and what it was he was suffering from. But Kevin's walking to me, he's, what's wrong with you? I said, nothing, buddy, you're fine, you're fine. And then he knew. He said, Donnie, what happened to Daddy? I said, come on, buddy, Mom's out in the car. She wants to see you. So I put my arm around him. I walk out to the car. It was one of those caravans, the slider door. We get into the back, and my mom's sitting there, and she turns around, and she looks at us, and she looks at Kevin, and Kevin looks at her. And my mom says, honey, Daddy had a heart attack, and he didn't make it. And this poor kid, this little 10-year-old kid, just lost it. And I felt so bad for him. See, I was 18. I had 18 years of life with my father. 18 years to learn from him, to learn accountability and responsibility and all the other things, and to be a man, and my little brother didn't have that. So I made a decision. I was going to do the best I could to fill in. I was going to go home on weekends, take him to Cub Scouts, take him to Pop Warner football, do whatever I could for him. I love that little guy. I still love that guy. He's a lot older now. He's got his own daughter. But if you really knew me, that's what you would know about me. That's a big part of who I am. That's a big part of what shaped my life. And what I'd like to do for you right now is I'd like to issue you a challenge. It's actually 3 challenges. Tell the people who mean the most in your life what they mean to you. Each and every day, each and every opportunity that you have, make sure that they know tomorrow's not guaranteed. I kick myself all the time for not speaking to my dad that Thursday night. I think he knew, but I'd like to be able to make sure I told him everything. All right? That's my beautiful family, my beautiful wife, 4 children. I don't leave the house without telling them I love them. Even if we're arguing and my wife might be on, like, it's important for me to make sure that they know, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. Look at the glass half full. Appreciate what you have. Choose positivity. The work that I do in education, each and every day, I try to make sure that I exemplify that I model that for my teachers and for my students. I greet them each and every day as they enter the halls, as they come up those steps to Shea High School with a smile on my face. Hey, good to see you. Glad you made it today. You know, nice sneaks. Good job in the game the other night. You guys got a game tonight? It's important. People want to know that they're noticed, that they're not walking the halls unnoticed. Choose positivity. And finally, the work that we do in education, get to know your students and let them know a little bit about who you are too, because it's amazing the relationship that creates. And I've asked students who say, those teachers who truly know me, who truly care about me, I will do anything for them. I will not let them down. I will study and do my homework. I'm on class on time. I'm prepared for tests. That's from the students. They tell me that. I know that. I believe that. I'm going to close with 2 things. One is one of my favorite TED Talks of all time. Rita Pierson said, Kids don't learn from teachers they don't like. Remember that when you're doing the work that you do. And the final thing, and it kind of goes along with what Rita Pearson says, is students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It's something I live by. It's not my own words. I don't know who the author of that is, but it's something I believe. It's something that I say. So I hope, in conclusion, I thank you for being here and listening. I thank TEDx for the opportunity, but I hope you're up to those 3 challenges. They start for you in life. They start today when you leave here. Make sure those people who mean the most to you know it. Thank you very much.